New Testament reading today, Paul gives us what I would call rules or guidelines of ministry. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning with verse 12. We can say with confidence and a clear conscience that we have lived with a God-given holiness and sincerity in all our dealings. We have depended on God's grace, not on our own human wisdom. That is how we have conducted ourselves before the world, and especially toward you. Our letters have been straightforward, and there is nothing written between the lines and nothing you can't understand. I hope someday you will fully understand us. Now look at that. I hope someday you'll fully understand us. Paul said, you haven't figured me out yet. Okay. Paul was a man of God. He didn't think like a businessman. He didn't think like a political leader. He said, one day I hope you'll fully understand us. And even if you don't understand us now, then on the day when the Lord Jesus returns, you will be proud of us in the same way we are proud of you. Now, I want you to notice some guidelines for ministry here. First of all, Paul said, as leaders, as pastors, we are to live among God's people with a God-given holiness and sincerity in all of our actions. We are not to go clubbing with the members. We are not to go out sinning with the members. We are not to join the people in questionable activities. We are to live among the people with a God-given holiness. And we are to live among the people with sincerity, that our words are sincere, our actions are sincere. Secondly, as pastors, we are to depend upon grace, not on human wisdom. He said, we have depended on God's grace and not our own human wisdom. He said, this is how we've conducted ourselves before the world and especially before you. She said, all right, we live among you with God-given holiness. We live among you with total sincerity. And he said, we live among you depending on grace, not upon our own wisdom. He said, you know what? That's how I lived among you. But then he said, now my ministry among you, that has some guidelines also. He says in verse 13, our letters have been straightforward and there's nothing written between the lines and nothing you can't understand. The words of a man of God or a woman of God are to be straightforward. We are not to play political speech, just straightforward. Yes, our words can be gracious. Jesus spoke with gracious words. Our words can be gracious, but our words need to be straightforward. There needs to be no ambiguity in our words. We speak straight up to people, and people always know what we say we mean. There is a straight up speech. There's no ambiguity in our words. So ministry is without ambiguity. Ministry is without politics. Ministry is just straightforward words. But I think the most beautiful thing here, Paul says, you may not understand us now because, please, as men and women of God, I understand we flow from a different core. We flow from a core. It's like a businessman told me one time, he said, Pastor Sumrall, we need a better ROI on our properties. I said, our ROI on properties is not financial, it's souls. So you may look at church properties as a poor investment, but God looks on properties as a great investment. It's an altar for God in the earth. It's something that allows us to bring souls. Okay, so we flow from a different core. We're not politicians. We're not businessmen. We're not looking to make money. That's not who we are. And when you try to evaluate us like that, forgive me, Paul said, you're not going to understand us right now. But he said, listen, there's a day that I want you to be proud of me. And he said, on the day when Jesus returns, when the rewards are given out, on the day when Jesus returns, he said, that's when you're going to be proud of us. On the day when Jesus returns, I want COP to be proud of me. I want COP to watch me receive my rewards from the Father and be proud of me. As I stand before the bema seat of Christ and I receive the rewards that God has for me, I want COP to be cheering and clapping and proud of what God has done by his grace through my life. God never said, and young pastors, listen to me, God never said the people would be proud of us in this world. In fact, Paul says, as apostles, he said, we're led like on a humiliation march. He said, people aren't proud of us right now. But on the day we stand before Jesus, when Jesus returns, that's when the people should be proud of us. Do you remember life before lockdown? Do you remember life before COVID? Do you remember all the things that we were in the middle of doing? Well, we're starting to get all of those started back up little by little. Next year, we'll be starting into the provincial crusades again. Our Go groups are reopening again. And we're starting back on the Remain Project. Just before lockdowns hit, we announced that we were staying right here on Taft Avenue. This is our ancestral home. We're very happy here, but we need to do some work because, there's new roofs that need to go on buildings. We've got to come in and renovate the interior. We need some more office space and kids' church space. So we presented to you the Remain program, and we actually had the bidding already done for the foundations. And during lockdowns, we put in 23 or 24 million pesos worth of piles out on Taft Avenue for Bay 7 Tower. All that's done, all that's paid for. Now, in that same time, many of you were faithful to your pledges, and even it was the middle of lockdown, we never mentioned it to you. We never talked about money at all during this lockdown season. But many of you were still faithful, and we've kept all that money's set aside. All that money's been set aside as designated money, and we're ready to start on Tower 7. Now, this weekend, I shared with you last weekend that we're going to do the pledges to get things finished. We're going to be renovating the main auditorium. We're going to be putting up Tower 7. We're going to be renovating the kids' tower. We're going to be putting another floor on top of Serenity. We've got a lot of things to do here on Taft Avenue, as well as we're going to build a 5-story educational tower and offices and a parsonage down at South Campus, and we're going to renovate South Campus Auditorium, put in a balcony, and really dress up the inside and outside and make it beautiful. So we've got a lot of things to work on. I shared with you last weekend, we're going to be doing the pledges, and I'm asking you this weekend, as a family, come ready to say, this is what we want to do to help. We want to build the house of God. We want to renovate the house of God. So as a family, you talk about it. What are we going to do as a family for the next few years on a weekly or on a monthly basis? And I ask you, bring a great offering this weekend. God has been good to us all during this lockdown season. Sit down with your family and talk about what seed does our family want to sow as we start back up this project. We'll see you this weekend.